All right, let's talk about these 4 books that I read this month. Let's just get right into all the books that I read because I don't want to hold y'all up for too long. I posted this on Twitter like so many times, this book, and I raved about it. I changed my name on Twitter. The first book I read this month I felt completely overly joyed and in love with was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Oh my gosh. So I love vampire books. You guys already know this about me. This book I was recommended to by a subscriber, and they were just sure I would like it, and they were wrong. I loved it. So let's get right to the plot. It takes place in this kingdom called Kingdom of Solace, and in the Kingdom of Solace there are people or creatures called the Ascended. Essentially the Ascended are like immortal beings, but they can be killed, but it just takes a lot to kill them. And the Ascended have these things called maidens, these women called maidens. I guess they have one every so often. So the current maiden is Poppy. Maidens cannot have relationships with people, they can't have friendships, they can't speak to other people, they can't be touched by anybody, they cannot learn to fight or defend themselves. Pretty much they make the maiden out to be this like helpless damsel that's dependent on the Ascended. Well, Poppy is unlike any other previous maiden. Poppy has the ability to feel the emotions of people around her, so she's an empath. The kingdom kind of holds Poppy on like this pedestal, even though they treat her so poorly. So there's this ascension that's gonna happen, and Poppy, for whatever reason, the ascension relies on her being present in the kingdom. However, Poppy, she is unlike any other previous maiden, not only because of her powers, but because one of her bodyguards actually teaches her how to fight. She can wield a sword, she has her own dagger. They don't know this about her, that she's able to fight and defend herself. So Poppy meets this young man by the name of Hawk Flynn, and Hawk Flynn actually goes to the Kingdom of Solace to become one of Poppy's new bodyguards because her old bodyguard, something happened to him, and so now she needs a new one, and here comes Hawk to save the day. He actually ends up getting into a relationship with Poppy, and it's kind of unspoken, of course. Pretty much Hawk betrays Poppy, he kidnaps her. The truth about her and her gift and her being the maiden and what that really means, who the Ascended really are, and the real history behind the Ascended and what they do and why they kept Poppy comes out. Hawk actually tells her all this truth and information, and she's kind of in this position where she has to determine what's real to her and what's not, what is the truth and what isn't the truth, and then she has to make decisions and choices that are going to affect the Ascended, are going to affect her, going to affect Hawk and where he comes from. And it was just so good, and she has to reevaluate her purpose, her gifts, her place in all of this, and it's just so good. In this book there isn't a whole lot of action. There are a couple of action, battle scenes. Overall, the book was amazing. That brings me to the next book that I read this month. It was a sequel to From Blood and Ash, which is called A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I was gifted the opportunity to read this book early as an ARC, and it came out of nowhere. Honestly, it did. It was so good. So I can't really give you guys too much of the plot because that would be giving you spoilers from the previous book, and then I don't want to do that for you guys. So I will say a few things about it. So it does follow Poppy and Hawk post-Hawk kidnapping, and in this book a lot of the truth comes out about the Ascended. We also are introduced to a couple of new characters. We have Atlanteans, and then we have Wolven, and then we have Craven. So let me explain that really fast because they're in the first book too. Some of them are. So essentially Atlanteans and the Ascended are vampires. However, Atlanteans and Ascended are both vampires, but they derive from different places. So I don't want to go too far into that either because that's in the book and it's explaining the book, and I don't want to give anything away. But they're both vampires, just from different places. And then you have Craven. Craven are cursed vampires who they have no brain function, no brain power. They really have no intelligence. They are just bloodthirsty people. Wolven, self-explanatory, they're wolves. In this book we really get a look into how the Wolven and the Atlanteans relationships are, as well as the Atlanteans and the Ascended relationships. Primarily this book takes place just with Poppy and Hawk on their journey to Atlantia. Of course, in the midst of their journey going to Atlantia, there's romance budding between, Hawk and Poppy. And so yeah, it's deeper than just the romance. The romance was really amazing, don't get me wrong, but I actually enjoyed how their relationship affected their battle, like the way they fought. And that is my favorite part of the entire book. They have so much animosity between the two of them because of where they come from. And because of where they come from, they both have a hand in each other's tragedy, like personal tragedy. So there are things that Hawk has done or has been a part of that has ended in tragedy for Poppy and her family, and vice versa. But there are still so much emotion and feelings involved between the two of them. And in this book, it follows really kind of this tension between the Ascended, so the Kingdom of Solace and the Ascended, and then you have the Kingdom of Atlantia and Atlantean. They're on the brink of war, really, and throughout this whole time it's just a bunch of events leading up to this big event between the Atlanteans and the Ascended, and between Poppy and Hawk. And it is just, the second book was really amazing. Like, the first book was really good and I loved it, but the second book is what really made me feel like this series is gonna be my favorite series probably ever. Oh my gosh, so good, you guys. And the magic, the world building in this book, the world building in the second book in the Kingdom of Flesh and Fire was phenomenal. I feel like I was walking in this world that Jennifer created. Like, I was physically there and it was so good. This next book, I have so much I can say about it, but like, no. The next book is You Must Not Miss by Katrina Leno. Quick trigger warnings, it does talk about sexual assault, alcoholism, child abuse and neglect, and eating disorder. So those are 4 of the trigger warnings that are in this book. So let's talk about this little here book, okay? So this is a magical realism book. That's what it's called. That's what it says. I mean, but this one, I don't know what the fuck it was really magical realism. But I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong though. So this book follows this girl Magpie. She has been through so many traumatic things in her life to be 16 years old. So her father cheated on her mother with her mother's sister, so Magpie's aunt. Magpie walked in and found them, so pretty scarring. And after that, Magpie's mom succumbed to alcoholism, so she's an alcoholic now and really neglects Magpie, and her sister walked out of her life. Magpie also experienced sexual assault at a party once, so we are kind of immediately thrown into all of that. Her life's pretty tough. Her ex-best friend no longer speaks to her anymore, so school is kind of a drag for her. But she does end up befriending this group of other kids who are kind of also socially exiled. Magpie has this journal that she writes in every single day, and she writes about this place that she wishes she could go to, and she actually names it Near. So Near actually comes to life in her backyard, and you can get to Near through her shed. And then it kind of just goes downhill from there. So Near is an exact replica of her current hometown, which is called Farther. So her subconscious comes to life as well, and her subconscious pretty much is like the most interesting character in the whole book. It really guides her through her time in Near, and kind of tells Magpie, like, Magpie, you need to think about these consequences of the actions that you're taking right now. Are you ready to face those consequences? And so Magpie just kind of loses control in this book. She takes everyone who's ever wronged her in her life, literally physically takes them to Near. They go into Near with her, and she tries to get revenge on these people. So I had a couple of problems with this book, actually a lot. So the first big problem I have with this book, and why I wouldn't recommend anybody really read it, is that number one, the description about her father cheating on her mother was very descriptive, which is okay, I can understand, because the impact should be there, like, right? She was scarred from that, and I think that that should be a point made in the book if that was like gonna be a part of her story, you know, as it progressed, right? But it really wasn't. And I was like, okay, this is kind of feeling fetishy at this point. Like, I can understand if you're drilling that home so that we know that this really impacted Magpie so tremendously. It didn't feel that way for me. My next problem with this book was just everywhere else. It was just like the characters felt kind of flat. They really didn't progress the story at all. The only character that I feel like really added to the story was her subconscious. Her subconscious was the one that kind of helped move the story along. Everybody else in the book, they were present, but they didn't have a presence, if that makes sense. She had no character development in the story. Her character was the same from the beginning, middle to the end. They all were, except for the subconscious. I was just like, this book had so much potential. It really was just a story about revenge, and it wasn't even a good revenge story. So, I don't know. I didn't really care for it. My next book is not a disappointment. The next one was so good. This book is called Pensive by Trevina Terry. I talked about this book in a little quick 4-mini review video, and there's a few trigger warnings here. So, the first trigger warning is domestic violence reference in this book. There is rape reference in this book, and there are kind of mature elements such as BDSM, and also there's torture in this book. And that's it. This book follows Asa and Elise. Ooh, Asa and Elise. So Asa, by day, he is a bodyguard. By night, he is a contract killer. He's contracted to kill people who commit sexual assault. So people will literally hire him privately to kill, will torture and then kill somebody who has committed sexual assault against somebody else. Then you have Elise. She is a professor adjunct, and she also is a writer who writes erotica stories. So she has all these fantasies in her mind. She's from Miami. She leaves Miami for a week to go to Chicago just to visit her best friend and go to a convention and to just kind of get away and just have like a little mini vacation. Well, while she's there, she runs into Asa, and they are just smitten with one another. They think they're both super attractive and they just want to get to know each other, but not too deeply. So they agree to this business ordeal, kind of, where Asa is gonna wine and dine Elise for 4 whole days. And Asa is loaded with money, okay? Like, loaded. And he kind of opens her up to his world of BDSM and him being a dom, and she is just like, I would like to learn. So she learns the ways of the BDSM world. Naturally, you would think these two would just cut it off once it was done after she went home to Miami, but no, kind of follows him over a year. And so 6 months later, we get to see them kind of reconnect again, and we realize that their attraction just went deeper than physical. They saw each other for who they really were, not for what they did, what they haven't done, or for what they've been through, and they fall in love, and you just get to see their love story play out, and it's super, super cute. I will say, not much of a plot in this book. It's more of just you're just enjoying the events of Asa and Elise. So that was all the books I read this month, you guys. I thought I read more, of course I didn't, but I did enjoy most of the books I read this month, so it was a pretty good reading month for me. And yeah, if you guys read a great book this month, please put it in the comments below. I would love to know what y'all are reading at home. And if you guys made it to the end of this video, please put the cool emoji with the glasses, like the shades. I love that emoji, so cute. So yeah, I will see y'all in my next video. Bye guys.